Today's guest is someone who has spent more than 3 decades building, scaling, acquiring, exiting businesses, and along the way has developed a very different perspective on what success actually means. David Guttman is a serial entrepreneur, investor, mentor, and speaker with multiple 8- and 9-figure essays to his name, a graduate of both Brown University and Wharton. David is also the creator of the anti-MBA movement, host of the David Guttman podcast, and a passionate advocate for servant leadership. After overcoming a life-threatening diagnosis in his 20s, he has dedicated his career to helping entrepreneurs build wealth, purpose, resilience, and lives they don't need to escape from. David, welcome to the Future Ventures Scaling with Clarity podcast.
Maxim, thanks for having me on.
It is my absolute pleasure to connect and learn about the journey. It's certainly very interesting. I'm curious as to how you overcame the challenges in your early 20s and what led you into entrepreneurship.
So my dad started a software company in his late 20s that eventually IPO'd. And so I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I also, my dad's a very smart guy. He actually wrote, before there was artificial intelligence, he basically did something similar called a 4th generation language, where you would design the screens and the reports and it would generate the code automatically. That company eventually was called Knowledgeware and IPO. So I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but my dad got pushed out of his company prematurely. And I learned by observing that it's okay to be bad at things in business, but it's the kiss of death to think you're good at something you're bad at. So for me, part of why I went back to get my MBA, which, by the way, I wouldn't do that today because it's a different world now. But back when I went to business school, there was no internet. And so I wanted to make sure I knew enough about every area of business that no one could bullshit me. Be an expert, but I wanted to at least know enough that I could manage people that were experts and to know enough if people were doing what they needed to. So, so that's basically how I started. And it's funny, it's funny how the little tiny things in your life can change the entire trajectory of things. I remember I read this one article that said the most successful people have an undergraduate degree in computer science or engineering. Again, this is before the internet, and then get a master in MBA from like a top 5 business school. That's literally all I did was read one article, and that's what I decided I wanted to do. There was very little thought that went into it. I'd love to say I had all this big master plan and all this intentionality, but not true.
Yeah. How do you describe your personality, David? Are you a fairly impulsive person? I mean, obviously making a decision just off one article kind of gives me a bit of a glimpse, but how would you describe yourself?
I'm a very positive person. Part of it is, you alluded to it, when I was 24, misdiagnosed by 3 doctors and told I had 6 months to live. In fact, I had just gotten into Wharton, and now I was being told I would be dead before I enrolled in the fall. So, you can imagine, right? Like, here I worked my ass off my whole life. I was a Division I college wrestler, which was super hard. Got into Brown super hard, getting into Wharton super hard. I busted my ass my whole life. And then I'm told I'm going to die. And I'm like, what the hell was all that for?
Yeah.
And it just got me to re-examine my life. And I don't take things so seriously anymore. Like, I used to take myself way too seriously back when I was in my, teens and early 20s. And now I'm, I think I'm a much more, playful attitude than I used to.
Interesting. So you got the wake up call in your 20s, whereas people may wait for their 50s, 60s or whatever before they realize. What are kind of the guiding principles that lead you, David?
They changed, right? I mean, obviously that was a big inflection point in my life. And ultimately what I decided was, because again, other than a few like family and friends being sad, like it really genuinely bothered me that it would not matter that I lived. That thought really troubled me. And so I'm like, well, okay. I basically vowed if by, some chance I survived, which I didn't think I would, I would, every opportunity that I had to touch someone's life in a positive way, I would take advantage of it. And I feel like I've stayed pretty true to that for the last 35 years. So
I mean, that's, I'm super curious. I normally ask this question at the end, but I want to ask it now. Like, and I want to put a twist on yours. What is the kindest thing somebody has ever done for you? And like, if we, given your whole philosophy on life, what is the kindest thing you have done for somebody?
kindest. So, it's funny. For a long time, I really was seeking out a mentor, right? And the problem I ran into is, well, I could find people that maybe they were good role models from a health and fitness standpoint or an athletic standpoint, but they weren't very successful professionally, or they were very successful professionally, but their relationships were terrible or their health was terrible. And the problem is, if you have someone who's a mentor, but only in one area, they're not really a great mentor, because like, so if someone is a role model from a professional standpoint, but they never go to their kids' baseball games, soccer games, like, their relationships are terrible, that's not really someone you want to emulate. And so I was always frustrated by the fact that I just didn't have anybody that was able to play that role for me. I had people that were role models in certain areas, but not in total. And so part of me, I guess part of what drove me was I wanted to become that for other people. In particular, I wanted to become that for my daughter. So, as I think about, the kindest thing that anyone's ever done for me, I don't know that I would call it kindness so much as they had just a huge impact on me. I mean, I had a seventh grade English teacher that changed the entire course of my life. At the time, I really struggled academically, which is ironic given the schools I went to, but I was tested at a third grade reading level when I was in seventh grade. And so I really struggled because I was severely dyslexic. I didn't know it at the time. I was diagnosed in seventh grade. And I had a seventh grade English teacher that saw my intelligence before I did. And he genuinely believed in me. And he really encouraged me to take honors classes and things like that. And if it wasn't for that, the entire course of my life would have been different. And so I don't know if I consider that a kindness exactly, but I guess in a way I really do, because the fact that he could see something in me before I could, I don't know. It really, even when I think back on it, it really touches me in a deep way. In terms of the kindest thing I've ever done for someone else, I don't know. I certainly have. I've done a lot of very nice things for my daughter. Probably the one that I was really excited about. My daughter grew up the poorest kid in the richest neighborhood in Chicago. So there's a suburb north of the city called Lake Forest, and that's like where like the one of her girlfriends was the head coach of the Chicago Bears, or the CEO of like Garrett's Popcorn. These are people that have like indoor swimming pools, right? Like, brand new car on their 16th birthday, people like that. So I think she was 10 or 11, and I wanted to do something really unique. So I basically had a song professionally written and recorded for her. And then I basically took the song and I took all the pictures of her and I throughout her life, and I basically put those pictures to music, and I gave it to her for a Christmas present. So that's probably the most thoughtful thing I've ever done. But I don't know. I've tried to travel through life and be as helpful and generous as I can be.
Amazing. And how long did it take you to produce the song, to have it made and put into
having the song written and recorded maybe only 2 months, because we iterated a couple times, and then maybe another 30 or 40 hours to go through all the photographs and decide which ones and have them be at the right place and stuff like that. The thing that was so hard was I had it done like 3 months before Christmas, and I was just dying to give it to her, but I had to wait until Christmas. So
of course. And do you mind me asking, how old is your daughter?
She's 26 now.
Okay. And so I'm a father of two girls. How do you survive the teenage years and kind of like, how do you maintain the relationship?
You have my great sympathies. Actually, now that I say that, I have a better thing that I so because it answers this question, but I had forgotten about it till you just reminded me indirectly. So when my daughter, we were very close. So I got divorced from my daughter's mom when my daughter was only 1 year old. So she doesn't know us together. And I've always been very
Mhm,
involved in her life and, a really present father, but she knows us only separately. And
mhm,
we were very, very close through her whole childhood. And when she was going off to college, I was really genuinely worried that we would grow apart.
mhm,
Just because we wouldn't see each other as much, we wouldn't talk as much. She's going to have her own friends. And, to be honest, like when I was off to college, it wasn't like I was hanging out with my parents. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I love my parents and all, but I don't want to
yeah,
necessarily spend time with them. Right. And
yeah.
so I was really worried about that. So I was like, what could I possibly do that would allow me to stay connected?
Mhm.
And my daughter's nickname for me is Podge. Honestly, I don't even know where she came up with that name, but whatever.
Okay.
He calls me Podge. Her friends call me Podge. Anyway, um, what I decided to do was every Sunday I would record a 5 minute video of me talking. I called it
Mm.
Coffee with Podge. And I basically pretended like I was having a cup of coffee with my daughter and I was just having a conversation with her. And I would pick a topic like how to manage stress, how to be a good friend, how to think about your future, whatever it might be. And so I would record a 5 minute video. I'd send it to her Monday morning, and then she would watch it on her way to campus. And
Mm.
she told me it was the most thoughtful gift I ever gave her. Um,
Wow.
in fact, what she started to do is she started to share it with her girlfriends. And then her girlfriends would like be like, hey, tell Podge next week to do one on this. Tell Podge next week to do one on that. And so anyway, it was a lot of fun. So, but my daughter said that was the most awful thing I ever did.
I mean, joking aside, this is brilliant idea. When my kids were young, I used to do gratitude moments with them, just lie in bed and just kind of, hey, let's remember what was the best thing about the day. Now the only time they really get to talk to them is windshield time when I'm driving them to and from volleyball or school or something like that. But no, that's brilliant. So was this the start of your media journey, or
You
it
know,
was independent?
it's funny you say that. No is the short, but I guess it really was without me really thinking about it.
Yeah.
I actually resurrected Coffee with Podge. I think I did about 15 or 20 episodes back about a
Okay.
year ago. But it just wasn't getting any traction, and my daughter didn't really seem to care that much. So I stopped doing it. But yeah, I guess indirectly it really was. And look,
Hmm.
I'm comfortable on camera and I'm
Yep.
comfortable doing public speaking and stuff like that. So it comes relatively easy to me, thankfully.
Hmm.
And my daughter seemed to appreciate it, so I did it. But it's funny, like it really, thankfully, we didn't grow apart, and my daughter,
Hmm.
much to my shock, loves spending time with me. Um,
Lovely.
and like I was just in Austin for a longevity conference, and she lives in Austin, Texas now. So any excuse I have to see her, I take it. So yeah, she's believe it or not, my misdiagnosis when I was 24 and my daughter, the two best things that ever happened to me.
Wow. Wow. Before I move off to business, I mean, you seem very grounded, very centered. Like, what is a day in the life of David Guttman looks like, because you seem to have like a very holistic perspective. You said I had a role model for sports, or I had a role model for this, but not one that kind of defined or covered all bases.
Every day is a little bit different. I split my time, so I do two weekly podcasts. So I don't record every single week because I have a backlog, but I record most weeks. I'm also on a fair number of podcasts. I probably do half a dozen podcasts a week where I'm a guest. I'm finishing two books. One I'm co-writing with an 18-year-old who's also a kid who I mentor. He's running a seven-figure AI business already, and he's only 18. He dropped out of high school when he was 15. And
Wow.
we're co-authoring a book called Life Maxing, which should be coming out here in about 4 or 5 weeks. I'm finishing a leadership book called Lead Like You Give a Shit. And then I mentor 8 different CEOs, that I have equity in their companies, and I mentor their CEOs. And so, and I also, launched a longevity business with 2 co-founders. So, I probably work 80 or 90 hours a week, but I feel like I don't work at all because I'm only doing things I like with people, who I enjoy, doing things I'm interested in.
And that's how it should be. Pursue the things that you're interested in, because otherwise it doesn't feel like work. So how did you? I mean, you said like you saw your dad scale a business. I think you said the name of the business was Knowledge Works, but how did you get your start? Like, when was the first company?
KnowledgeWare. So I went to So I was a my undergraduate degree was in computer science, believe it or not, with a concentration on artificial intelligence back when AI was a very different thing than it is now. And so I did software development for a few years before I went back and got my MBA. And then after my MBA, I got my start doing something called a search fund. So I don't know if you're familiar, but basically you raise money from angel investors and they give you the equity capital to acquire a business. So at the age of 29, having no management experience at all, I was running a 400-person call center business. And one of those professional mentors, she technically worked for me as my chief operating officer, but I basically worked for her. I mean, she was one of the best leaders, one of the best managers I've ever met. Sadly, she passed away from brain cancer, but she was an amazing leader. My leadership style definitely came from her. And that's how I really, and we did a dozen acquisitions in that business. So I learned a lot about how to value businesses, how to buy businesses, how to sell businesses, how to run and scale, how to centralize back office functions. So it was a 5-year, crash course in how to start, scale, and grow businesses. And it was a great learning ground for me.
How long did it take you to raise the search fund?
Not that long. It was funny at the time. I thought there's no one on the planet dumb enough to write me a check, right? Like I'm like, I haven't done anything. Like, why would anyone write me a check, right? We raised about $450,000, I think, and I actually raised 2/3 of it. I had a partner, and it was an interesting experience. But I would say probably we raised the money in about 5 or 6 weeks from start. Okay. It didn't take that long. It is, I will say, having raised a bunch of capital throughout my career, it is harder to raise a smaller amount of money than a bigger amount of money. Raising $5 million is easier than $500,000 in my experience.
Why? Just because you go into an institution that already know kind of like what to expect, or that the checks are bigger? No,
I think it comes down to most angel investors, and again, I got burned on this. My first angel investment is the biggest, they say the most common reason small planes crash is they run out of fuel. The reason most businesses fail is they run out of cash, basically their version of fuel. And so when you're raising a smaller amount of capital, most investors aren't interested because you're not raising enough capital because ultimately you want to probably raise 2 to 3 times the amount of capital you think you're going to need to get to break even if you can get the right valuation. So, but that was the first time I'd raised money. It took less time than I thought it would have. But it was a challenging process for sure, and a very humbling one too.
The people that betted better than you, were they friends and family, or people that you never met?
There were, of the 450K, maybe 50K were people I knew, and the other 400K were people I didn't know. So
interesting. And so how did you go about finding them?
I didn't think I knew anyone wealthy enough to write a check, but you're only 1 or 2 degrees of separation from most people, and really I just networked. And what it really came down to, what I realized it really came down to is the kind of people I was raising money from, they could all afford to lose the money that they were investing, right? So it wasn't meaningless to them to stroke a $25,000 or $50,000 check, but it also wasn't going to change their life if they lost the money. So they were doing it mostly because someone had helped them early in their career and they wanted to pay it forward. And so, I was just very honest about the fact that, hey, look, I have no plan B. this is all I'm going to focus on. I'm going to try to do everything I possibly can to make your investment pay off. If we fail, it won't be for lack of effort. I think that people appreciated the directness and sincerity of it. And, not everyone said yes, but enough people said yes that we raised the capital.
If somebody's coming to you to write a check, what would you expect to see from them?
Well, again, because I learned the hard way, the very first thing I do is I'm like, first of all, I want to understand how much capital you're raising and why you think that's the right amount of capital. So in order for me to even consider making an investment, I have to be convinced that the amount of capital you're raising is 2 to 3 times, at least twice as much as you need to get to break even. And if not, what I usually do is I help them think through that, because people like, people will be like, well, first they think they need to figure out how much capital they're going to raise, and then they think about the valuation. It's the other way around. It's the other way around. The evaluation is completely fungible, And so, it's like at the right valuation, you should take as much capital as you can possibly get, but you still need a budget and a forecasting model that lays out because the part that's amazing to me is something like 95% of businesses under, say, 25 million in annual revenue don't have a budget, right? Which is amazing. It's like, it's just, you're not being professional enough, in my opinion, if you don't have a budget. Even one of the guys who I mentor now, he's tracking to a 9-figure exit early next year. He only launched the business in August, but we went into this year with a budget, and part of why I think we're going to get the exit valuation that he deserves is because we have a budgeting and forecasting model that allows us to demonstrate that we had a plan, that we're executing against that plan, and then we know what we're doing.
Yeah, I'm a CPA by background, and so that's one of the areas we help out companies that it's the same. Like, how often would you get a pitch deck and then no financial model behind it, or the math doesn't matter? You're like, well, how did you come up with those numbers? It's extremely common. Question for you. So if you were starting from zero today, not having the David Guttman name, not having the network or the capital, the reputation, what business would you start? What business would you focus on building?
So it would depend on what my talent stack looked like, right? So the wonderful thing about the world today is, with AI and the internet, like, you can become, I don't know how old you are, but I just turned 60. I don't think we're probably not that far apart in age, like probably not more than 10 years apart. When we were growing up, like, if you wanted to accumulate knowledge or you had to go to a library or a bookstore. And by the way, there weren't even book reviews. So it wasn't even like you say, oh, this one got 2,000 4-star or 5-star reviews. There were no reviews, right? And so even to identify, how'd you identify if it was a good book? You'd have to read through the table of contents and read a few pages, or maybe someone recommended the book because they liked it. Accumulating knowledge was so hard. Now it's so easy. There is no topic on the planet other than maybe something really technical like physics or something like that. Like, I can't put someone on Mars like Elon Musk, but there's almost no topic I couldn't become an expert in. And when I say that, meaning in the top 1% of the people on the planet about any topic in 90 days. So if I was starting from scratch, I would probably do some AI brainstorming about what my interests and aptitudes were, and then basically identify sort of holes in the market, and then use AI to come up with a business plan. I'll give you an example. My dad is 84, and I was a Division I college wrestler. My dad wrestled a little bit in college, and so we do this father-son college wrestling trip once a year where we go see a wrestling match together. This year it was State in Iowa. So we're driving 7 hours round trip to drive back and forth from Chicago to Iowa. So my dad was lamenting the fact that he doesn't have any reason to get out of bed in the morning. And I said, well, Dad, if you could snap your fingers and do anything, what would it be? He said, I want to make the world a nicer place. I want people to be kinder to each other. So I came up with this idea called 30 Acts of Kindness, where basically, so my 84-year-old father, with AI's help, built a mobile app called 30 Acts of Kindness. We set up a 501c3 not-for-profit, and basically we're going to launch it July 1st. And basically you document your kindness journey for 30 days. And at the end of the 30 days, we send you a bracelet that says you're certifiably kind with a serial number tied to your acts of kindness. So the entire idea for this business, I brainstormed with AI in 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like a completely new idea, blank slate, had the entire 100 page worth of business plan and notes about how I would execute it in 3 hours. I couldn't have done that in 6 months. You know, and it wouldn't have been as good as what I did in 3 hours. So there's no excuse. It really just comes down to, do you have the discipline and tenacity to actually execute and not give up?
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming that you're based in Illinois, David?
No. So my dad lives in Chicago, and I lived in Chicago for a number of years. I live in the Phoenix area now.
Okay. But I'm assuming that you are an hour ahead. So that's 9:22, 10:22 for you?
Yeah. So right now it's 7:20.
Oh, 7:20. Okay. So, I mean, for me, this goes to show that, like, people with grit, people with perseverance, tenacity, they just wire differently. Like, you know, if the will is there, you can persevere through anything. You've had adverse moments, you overcame. So I agree with you. There's no excuse not to use it. I'm curious, what is your favorite AI app, and how do you use it? Like, you mentioned brainstorming. I get that.
So it depends. I use different ones for different things, and I actually almost always use multiple AIs. So I recently did a couple of TED Talks, and when I was working on my TED Talk, what I would do is, let's say I had a paragraph and I just didn't quite like the way it sounded. I would take it and I would give it to 3 different AIs. The ones I usually use are Grok, which is the one that's inside of X. I use GenSpark, which is a meta agent. It uses different LLMs and it integrates the results. And I use Claude. Those are the 3 I use the most. I use Manus and some other ones too. It depends on what the task is. So if I'm doing writing, I might use Manus, more than I might use some others. Doing legal docs, I tend to use those in Claude. So it depends on what the task is. But so what I did was I would take the paragraph, I would give it to 3 different AIs and say, I don't really like the way this sounds. I want the listener to feel these emotions. Give me 3 options that do it better than my paragraph. And now I've got 9 different variations based on the 3 different AIs. I would then use my own discernment to, synthesize and integrate those. And then I would feed it back to the 3 AIs and say, what do you think about this? Right. And I would just keep iterating until I got something that was perfect. And it worked out. My TED Talk, believe it or not, I only released 3 weeks ago, and it's already a top 1% TED Talk of all time. Fingers crossed, if I get to the 1 million view mark by 6 months, I can credibly claim a top 100 TED Talk of all time.
Wow. How achievable is it? I'm assuming that, given the numbers guy that you are, that there's some kind of a KPI and trajectory curve that you're tracking against.
Yeah, I'm tracking to 100K in my first month, and then I've got to have to put a social media marketing strategy to get to that 1 million. That's what I'm working on. So
amazing. Yeah, I mean, I echo your comments. I mean, we build orchestration layers, try to work, like, use agents, but my favorite app at the moment is Whisperflow. You were talking about brainstorming. I take my dog for walks every day, and so in Whisperflow, it's voice, speech to text, but it polishes it. And so I would be just literally talking, because it cuts you off at 5 minutes. I'll be talking for 5 minutes until it gets cut off, and then restart the session. So my prompts in some cases are 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes long, depending on what I'm doing, or just iterate, just give it a context. The output that they get is absolutely phenomenal. So from a brainstorming perspective, it's my favorite time. Take the dog for a walk. I usually do 6 kilometers, which is about 4 miles. And it takes about an hour. And It's super creative time. It's a super creative time for me.
I have not tried that one. I'll check it out.
Yeah. I downloaded it in I think it was March, and so far I've spoken 400,000 words.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, I stopped using my fingers as an input. I talk to the computer. I talk to my phone. I'm going from 60 to 70 words per minute to now going to 140, 150.
Yeah,
Love it.
I don't do it as much as I should, but I much prefer to talk than I do to type, for sure.
Yeah. I hear you. Are you using AI to write the books that you're currently writing?
I absolutely am. In fact, it's so funny. People are like, oh, it's not you if you use AI. Oh, bullshit. Of course it is. Like, it all depends on how you do it. I don't say write a chapter about this.
Yeah.
So, like, I'll give you an example. The way I'm doing the life maxing book that I'm co-authoring, 15-year-old, one, he's an AI expert. So he's built an entire LLM, kind of protocol on the back end where it knows a lot about me, it knows a lot about him. He fed it a bunch of our content. We gave it an overall structure. And then what we did was we had an outline of about 40 chapters, right? And then what we did was we recorded a 1-hour conversation between the two of us.
Nice.
For each of the 40 chapters, right? It created a transcript. We then took like the first 10 transcripts and we said, create a chapter structure that best is suited to these 10 chapter summary. It then created a chapter structure. We made adjustments to it. And then once we're done, basically we run all 40 chapters through that structure. And then what we do is Joey takes half the chapters and edits them and gives them to me. I take half the chapters, edit them, and give them to him. And not only that, we even give it writing samples. So, hey, this is how I talk. This is how I write, so that it sounds like us. And ultimately, it is us. It's just we're going to finish something in 4 months that would have taken us 2 years.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So, is it fair to say that you're AI optimist based on what you're describing?
Well, it's funny. I'm a little bit of both, right? Because I am a little terrified about, AI deciding that maybe we're taking up, humans are taking up too many resources, and I'm thinking a little bit of Skynet, So there's a little bit of that. Like, there's a non-zero chance that's going to happen. With that being said, for me personally, what it allows me to do is all the stuff that I hated about, whether it's writing or whatever it might be, I can outsource all the things I hated to AI and keep all the creative stuff myself. And so that's the best of all worlds. And so like all the mundane stuff that I didn't like, I can have AI do most of the heavy lifting there, which is why I can write a book in a few months that would have taken me a couple of years. So, but I do think that partly because, I'm worried about centralized, digital currency. I'm worried about, social scorecards and stuff like that. You see people, depending on who's in power, you see people getting canceled. You see bank accounts getting frozen. You look at what happened in Canada, where people that donated to a cause had their bank accounts frozen. They weren't even the ones protesting. They were just donating to the people that protested, and they were banked. You have people in the UK being arrested for memes. I mean, and unfortunately, something like 80% of the world's population is easily brainwashed, and AI is really good at brainwashing. So, I am nervous. I'm not going to lie. It's going to be interesting. I don't know how it's going to play out, but at least I know in the meantime, I'm going to make the best of the good parts for now.
What safeguards do you think that need to be in place to make sure that we use AI in a responsible way?
Unfortunately, I don't know that there is any way to really have true safeguards. And I think the reason that that's true is you have a bit of an arms race. It's kind of like the nuclear arms race in a different flavor, right? Because the difference is with the nuclear one, like at some point you had mutually assured destruction, right? With AI, while you might have mutually assured destruction, it may not be seen that way. And I think that everyone's racing to get ahead. And once you get ahead, I mean, once AI can recursively learn, who knows what's going to happen? And if you really understand, and again, because I have a technical background and an AI and a deep understanding of AI, like I understand that it's a bit of a black box. Like we don't even understand how it comes to the conclusions that it does. It's unpredictable by its very nature. And so I don't think there's any way to have real guardrails that would be ubiquitous across the entire world. So I wish there was, I wish I had a better answer. Maybe you have one, but I don't.
Well, I mean, probably the most important element of your comment was the fact that we're in an arms race. And so unless you get to a coordinated, orchestrated effort, how do you make sure that everyone behaves in the right way? Without it, like if you have, let's say that there's five parties, if four of them behave the right way and one doesn't, it invalidates all of them.
Yeah. And the difference is a nuclear weapon used for its intended purposes will cause destruction. With AI, it's not that obvious, right? Because, you know, once AI can recursively learn, then you just don't know where it's going to go. It could decide that like here would be an amazing example, amazing use case for AI. It would be great if there was an AI that was the closest thing we could possibly have to a real source of truth, right? That, you know, it would cut through all the noise and bullshit, that you could ask it, hey, what's true about what's going on in Iran, or what's true what's going on with the Epstein files, and you could get a real answer, right? The only thing is, anything I see in the media now, that's the only thing I know that's not true. Like, I don't know what's actually true, but the only thing I can be certain of is whatever they're telling me is not true. And unfortunately, that's the world we live in. We don't have a news meet. We don't have journalism anymore. We only have propaganda. Not to get too political here, but it's like, that would be a great use case for AI, but I don't know that it's doable, unfortunately. I know Elon was sort of trying to do that with Grok, but I don't think it's there. Not even close.
I mean, from a technology perspective, there's a lot of companies that are trying to drive AI from probabilistic to deterministic models, and so I get the idea, I get the concept, but if we're taking the example around knowledge and veracity or truth, how do you get this? Because I mean, ultimately, who decides what is true? Is it like the people? Is the humans gonna? Where does the badge of authenticity come from? Because math is math. You can compute anything, but like, kind of like, who decides what is true?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if someone had told me when, you know, say 15 or 20 years ago, that people would actually think that it would be a good idea for 10-year-olds to change their gender, I'd be like, there's no way people would agree to that. No way in a million years. And I'd have been, you know, it's, you know, to what's true. We can't even agree we have things that are on video from yesterday, and we can't agree about what's on the video. You know what I'm saying? So you're right. You know, understanding, you know, what's true that's what I'm saying. Like, maybe AI could manage it, but I don't know. It's a tough one.
What scares you and what excites you about the future?
Again, I would say AI is both of those for me. It's scary, and it's also inspiring at the same time. Like, I just turned 60, you know, a couple months ago, and I have never been able to be more creative in my entire 60 years than I have in the last 6 months. I've done more creative work in the last 6 months than the rest of my life combined. And it's all because of AI. So it's so incredibly inspiring that it's a force multiplier. If you already have knowledge and expertise and creativity, it's an amazing force multiplier for that. And it really is more around governments and the misuse of the technology that troubles me.
Interesting. This is curiosity question based on my own personal observations, but when I go into a group and inadvertently the question around AI pops up, I'm surprised that more people haven't adopted AI in a bigger way. What has been your experience, you being an early adopter, in your 20s, studying AI, machine learning, and kind of like, so you're AI native, you understand the tool, you understand technology, you understand how to use it. In your circle, is this the same? Are people in your circle adopting AI in the same fashion, or are they staying on the sidelines and waiting to see what happens?
I think the adoption curve isn't so different from what we're used to. So, first we had the internet. Everyone was like, oh, it's a fad. Clearly not a fad, right? Then you had social media, then you had Bitcoin, right? And I still, the fact that every person doesn't have at least 5 or 10% of their liquid net worth in Bitcoin, to me, is insane. Paying any attention to what's going on in the world from a monetary policy standpoint, the fact that I know people that have hundreds of millions of dollars and have none of their money in digital, in crypto, which is crazy to me. I can send $100 million to anywhere in the world in 5 minutes for pennies, right? If you try to do that from a bank account, it would take an act of God, And so, they have to pass legislation to be able to do that. So, but it's amazing that even that's not adopted. And I feel like AI is the same thing. The Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, is unbeaten in human existence, which is there's always going to be that 20% that are going to embrace it. And 80% are going to be late to the game. And I think AI is the same. People are using AI the way that you use Google. You don't type, if you just type in Google, what's the best movie last year, and you ask AI a question, you don't get that different of an answer. And so a lot of people, because they don't know how to leverage it, they're like, it's not that different. It's completely different if you know how to leverage it.
Massively different.
Yeah.
Massively different. So following that thread, I'm curious, do you think that if you're not using AI, if you don't adopt AI early enough, that the gap between people that are not adopting it and the people that adopt it early is going to be so massive that it's not going to be clawable?
It's an interesting question. I don't think that's going to be the issue, because I think what will happen is as AI gets better and better, embracing AI will become easier, right? So right now, if I want to write an AI agent to, review my email and write draft emails, I could figure that out, but the average person's not going to be able to figure that out. A year from now, 3 years from now, anyone will be able to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
I do think that it will become easier to embrace AI. So I'm not worried about that. What I'm actually more worried about is anyone, say, maybe past the age of 15, that today is 15 or older. To some extent, they've learned how to do things, right? The old fashioned way, if you will. But someone born today, they're never going to learn to drive a car. They're never going to know how to do laundry or fold laundry or any of that. They're not going to, and they're never going to write a term paper. It's never going to happen, right? And so they're never going to write a line of code, all the things that. So I know how to do the things the hard way, which gives me the capability of being more creative when I'm having AI do the grunt work. In my dad's case, 84-year-old guy, had AI basically build a mobile app. Now, he would not have been able to do that on his own. But because he had the background and the experience, he was able to interact with AI in a way that allowed him to do that. So my concern is really for the people that are sort of under 15, where they may never develop the core skills necessary to leverage AI in a way that's useful. I don't know. Human beings are very, adaptive. So we'll have to see how that plays out. It's a question, because if you think about the way education is currently, and again, I say this having gone to 2 of the better schools in the world. If I practically beg my daughter not to go to college, I just thought it would be a waste of 4 years and $200,000, right? I'm like, I'd rather just give you the money and have you put it in Bitcoin. You'd be way better off. And so I think that education in particular is going to change dramatically here in the next 10 years. It's just not going to make sense to go to, and you think about how inefficient going into a classroom and listening to, a teacher that really hasn't done much pontificate about a topic that, they might have an academic intellectual understanding of, but they've never actually done anything, especially if you look at things like entrepreneurship. My entrepreneurship professors were useless. They never did anything, and they're teaching me about how to be an entrepreneur. As opposed to, I can go on YouTube and watch, talks from from Elon Musk, from a Steve Jobs, from Larry Ellison, the best entrepreneurs, in the history of the world, and hear about, hear the lessons from them. Way more useful.
Yeah, I agree. Ultimately, I think that the future of education would be very, very different, very immersive. It will be very much on demand. There's already like schools that they're kind of like playing. The old model was kind of Montessori, playing on your strengths, playing on your interests. But if now, with some of these new schools that are emerging, like it's dynamic curriculum, it's personalized, it's one-on-one. Probably the biggest observation that they have around AI is that what used to be mass is now one. Like everything is, you can get the personalization for anything and everything.
Well, even like for me, I was severely dyslexic, right? My learning style is different. I would imagine with an AI driven learning model, you could help someone with a learning disability like I had, learn better, read better, have better reading comprehension, things like that. Kids with autism, ADHD, stuff like that. There's no doubt in my mind that one-on-one education is going to be the way things go. When I was growing up, homeschooling was very unusual. Only the really weird, like maybe if you're Amish, or something like that. But nowadays it's fairly common, partly because the schools have become pretty woke, but also just because the education itself. Elon Musk's not putting his kids in public school, or even private school. He's, educating them himself. It's not that it's kind of weird when you think about it, that, that for so long we chose to outsource the education of our children to institutions that didn't shepherd that with the right level of responsibility, in my opinion, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. Couple of rapid fire questions. What's a book every entrepreneur should read?
So this one might seem a little bit surprising, but my all-time favorite book is Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. And it isn't a book about entrepreneurship per se, but it kind of is. There's I don't know if you've read the book, but
no.
There's a really famous speech in there. In fact, the main female character in the book is named Dagny Taggart. My daughter's middle name is Dagny after that character in the book. But there's a really famous speech by one of the characters, Francisco d'Ancona, and it's called the money speech. And he's at a party and someone says, well, money is the root of all evil. And he basically gives this 15-page rebuttal about not only is money not the root of all evil, but money is the root of an equitable, value-driven world. Because in true capitalism, right, in a true capitalistic society where the government isn't picking winners and losers, because that's the bigger problem we have right now, is we don't have pure capitalism. We have crony capitalism. We have capitalism that's been bastardized by the government picking winners and losers. And that's both sides. The Republicans and Democrats both do it. Democrats might be a little bit worse, but they're both bad. And so this book talks about what capitalism is the free exchange. We basically have to have two willing parties, a person willing to give you, some kind of compensation for a service or product, and it's an equal exchange of value, right? And if you've ever read any Milton Friedman or Thomas Sowell or any of that, there's nothing that's a better level playing field than capitalism. And Milton Friedman had this famous quote where he said, I'll make sure I get the quote right. It was something along the lines of, if what you're looking for is equality of outcome, you won't have freedom, and you won't have equal outcomes. Like, you can't put your finger on the scale. And while you want to have everyone have equal opportunity, it's impossible. It's impossible to have equal outcomes. I mean, I'm 5'7.5", being in the NBA, probably not in the cards for me, and so is that fair?
Wrestler was.
What's that?
But being a good wrestler that was an advantage.
Yeah. And well, exactly. That's exactly what I wanted to play basketball. My dad's like, you're 3 feet tall, you're going to the basketball team. And but my point is that fair?
Yeah.
The other thing that I think that people really get wrong is, and I consider myself a very humble person, and the reason is I don't feel special. I feel fortunate. There's a very big difference. If I were born in sub-Saharan Africa dying of dysentery, it wouldn't matter how smart I was, or how loving my parents were, or how good of an athlete I was, or how ugly I was. None of that would matter, because I'd be dying of dysentery in sub-Saharan Africa. So how fortunate for me that I was born on Long Island, New York, and not in sub-Saharan Africa. So, anyone born to the same DNA and circumstances as me would be me, and they'd have accomplished exactly what I accomplished. So instead of patting myself on the back for all the things I've done or not done, or punish myself for the things I haven't done, I'm like, I got dealt a pretty good hand, and I feel really fortunate that it played out the way it did. And that's why I try to help other people, that maybe weren't fortunate as me.
Amazing. Thinking about fortune, what legacy do you hope to leave behind?
So legacy is an interesting one for me. So I'll ask you a question before I answer it, which is, do you know the first name of your 8 great-grandparents?
No.
Nobody does. Nobody knows the first name of their 8 great-grandparents. These are people you are directly descended from by a couple of generations, and you don't even know their first name. So the idea of legacy, when I think about 100 years, or certainly 1,000 years from now, will it have mattered that I lived? I don't think so. And even if I was so successful that I had a street named after me, or a wing in a hospital, or whatever, will it really still matter that much? Probably not. And so instead, the way I like to think about it is, whatever legacy I'm going to have, I want to try to create and enjoy while I'm still here. And the way to do that is to try to create as many, make as big an impact on the people that I do interact with in my life, that I come across, the people that I coach and mentor, my family, my friends, my daughter, my wife, the people that matter the most to me. To try to make as big an impact for those people, because I'll be able to enjoy that during my lifetime. I think that will have the biggest ripple effect. And then the other thing that my wife has really encouraged me to do is do a lot more speaking, a lot more writing, so that I can try to affect more people. And so I am trying to do that, just to create as many ripple effects as I possibly can. Even things like the 30 acts of kindness thing with my dad. I'm really excited about that, because the goal is going to sound very ambitious: 10 billion acts of kindness in 10 years, more than 1 act of kindness for every person on the earth. So that's the goal.
Wow. That's an amazing goal. David, I really enjoyed the conversation. With your agreement, I would love to drop links to all of the projects you're working on, including your dad's. Let's try to promote it. I'm not sure if the app is out, but let's promote it. Let's try to get people to achieve 10 billion acts of kindness.
I appreciate that. So it's gonna launch July 1st is the target date. So I don't know when episode will release, but I'd love to. But here's the other thing I'm happy to offer to your audience. So I created a course called the Anti-MBA. It's what I wish they had taught me at Wharton, but didn't. It's a 4.5-hour course. I never did anything with it. And I've just decided I'm just going to give it away for free. So any one of your listeners that would like access to it, happy to give them access to it. If someone's an entrepreneur, it's a really useful, in 4.5 hours, you will learn the basics of what you need to evaluate an idea, start, scale, and even sell a business.
Is this something? So we're working on launching a Future Ventures Academy. Essentially, we primarily work with scale-up founders, but we understand that like startup founders need just as much help. So, like our goal is to launch the Future Ventures Academy, kind of give the content away for free for startup founders, and just charge scale-up founders because they have the ability to consume. Is this something that we can put through the academy and just have you coach or teach? I don't know what the format for the NT-MBAs.
I'd be happy to do that. Look, at the end of the day, I'm trying to be as helpful to as many people as I can. What I'll do is I'll send you a link to the content. If you find it useful, it might be useful. Happy to.
Please. David, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on. Let's stay in touch. And thank you so much for your graciousness with your time.
Maxim, thanks for having me on.
Pleasure.